This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Aaron, Joey, and I talk about being stewards and how tricky it is to make change. Not the coin circulation issue, so you know.
Woo!
Banging on a trash can. Drumming on a street light. One little voices. This is Joey.
Camp Aaron Powers. He is hosting a pod with Joey and Jessica. It's really starting like this, and this is what an Aaron sounds like.
And this is what an executive producer and Angelica Pickles, Jess Vander, sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess. I think I've been Angelica Pickles before, so that really must say something.
No, that's good.
Also,
I don't think
most
I've ever called
misunderstood.
you Angelica Pickles before. I think that's just like your spirit animal, maybe.
oh, okay.
She's very
Okay.
misunderstood. She is very misunderstood in the Rugrats universe, and I think they did a good job with her and All Growed Up. I thought they started to fix some things. That's good. Mhm.
They redeemed. She had a redemptive arc and all grown up.
She did. They made her a full character. You know, it's like, how much can you ever make a cartoon like have a trajectory, especially in 1990? But they got there, and it was really, really meaningful. She's just an awesome, smart girl who is facing off against a world that doesn't appreciate awesome, smart girls. That's basically it.
Truth.
Preach.
Hallelujah.
Well, our house is clean. Aaron, what do you got for us?
Nice. So, this week is this very, very, very special episode. We at Sylvain this week launched a piece, a thought, a reflection. It's not a thought piece. It's a reflection on.
It's a thought piece.
Well, that'd be undercutting it, but it's really a big reflection on what our role is in delivering a positive impact on the clients we work with, the world we inhabit, and the people that surround us, period. And it's called A Developing Story, Self-Reflections of a Progress-Guided Consultancy, specifically this year, 2020 to 2021, impact.sylvain.co/2021. Plugging it, yes. Namely because it is what we do for a living. I think that the document itself, it's very, very detailed. It's very rigorous, so it reflects that about us.
It's
but more
beautiful,
specifically, it's really, really well designed. It's very, very well designed. But I think what excites me most is that it captures the collective intention that that sort of combines everybody that I've worked with for 5 years now. That there is a desire to make sure that we're responsible for the energy that we bring into the room, that we are thoughtful about our presence having residual impact, and recognizing that we're not there yet. Like recognizing that like we're works in progress. And as a result of being a room full of people who are works in progress, that are all trying to work with businesses who may or may not recognize the ways in which they need to progress, I think that this non-impact impact report is very reflective of the intentions that are what I've always felt it through to the company. And so I'd love to have a conversation about something that comes out of this report. But before going in there, I mean, Joey, you helped start the company. It's been 12 years. I'm going to do a little like interview segment. Not really. I'm just asking you like, when you hear me talking about that, what about that resonates with you from 12 years ago and the work that y'all have done till now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we started the company in some ways as a response to some like not great working experiences that Ben and Alen and I had, where we sort of found ourselves in companies that sort of had values misalignments to how we felt, and we wanted to have more impact in the world, and we wanted to sort of do things that were making a positive impact. And also that sort of beginning point of like, well, we don't want to be like what we just saw, sort of gave us this impetus and this freedom to feel like we could do it differently. And, to say that we saw, where we are today at, over 70 people when we started the company is super not true. Like, it was like faith and a prayer, type of thing when we started the company, like belief in ourselves and crossing our fingers and, hoping we didn't fall down on our face. But the things that you said, I think, and what comes out of this report is like, we may be on the leading edge of companies in terms of how we're doing these things, and like good enough isn't good enough. And I think that's sort of what we're trying to get at in this report, is sort of an open conversation about accountability, and including our own. And this isn't meant to be like a finger wagging exercise. When I shared the report on my LinkedIn page, big numbers obviously coming out of my LinkedIn page.
Big star right here.
Yeah, this is sadly where I have the most clout, which is a thing that I regularly contend with. When I shared it, I said, this is not meant to be chiding or self-aggrandizing or moralizing. This is the only way that we're going to do this thing and have an impact in the world is if we're sharing and cooperating and collaborating in these exercises. And I think that's what's at the root of this report, is like, we're not doing it to be like, hey, other companies, look how much better we are than you. We, like, candidly, we have no idea what's happening inside these other companies, but we're saying like, here's what we're doing. We're sharing because we think this is important to have sort of a progressive mindset as an organization, to be trying to be better, to try to be sort of a future forward company that is, righting wrongs that in individual conversations we may all like agree and say like, people shouldn't be treated this way in a company, or companies shouldn't be doing these things out in the world. But then somehow when we go into our office, we sort of move from that perspective, which we talk about in the report, of being a steward of an idea in your real life because you feel like you're empowered to live your life in a certain way, and you get to make the decisions, to becoming a bystander when you come into the office and doing what you're told, or not necessarily taking a critical lens to things. And I think at the root of it, we do have that power. We're seeing people sort of collectively take on that power to make changes in so many ways. I mean, the news today or yesterday was about the first Starbucks, the first group of Starbucks employees developing a union at a local Starbucks in outside of Buffalo or outside of Rochester. And I think like instances like that are heartening. And when you're trying to create change and progress in the world, knowing that you don't have to do it by yourself, that you need other people to do it, and that as much as the sort of responsibility is on, big companies and governments and whoever to do those things, all of those things are made up of many individuals. And so how are we starting to sort of take responsibility and accountability on ourselves, and the ways in which our small bit of power can have a large amount of influence, right? Our company is 75-ish people, and all the companies we work with are huge, but they're coming to us asking for our advice and our guidance and our counsel and how to make decisions. And all of a sudden you realize that your influence can be far greater than sort of the sum of its parts.
This starts to get to the heart of the question that I think we should talk about. The report itself anchors on an elegantly simple, if not incredibly difficult idea, which is that we as consultants, period, need to move from being hapless bystanders of what happens around us to being stewards of progress, to moving things forward to be better than the way they are today. And it opens up a question to me more about human nature. And this is my question. How do we, as human beings, not consultants, unlearn learned helplessness?
I love, Aaron, that you're taking this question from what is an in-industry obligation as originally posed, but taking this idea to everybody, and how actually when you even think about all the conversations we've had over the last several months, talking about power, talking about mediocrity, holding companies accountable, and other commentary on institutions, cancellation, or Joey's issues with the idea of cancellation, like all of these are, in my mind, like a similar sphere of conversation around how do we deal with progress at all, and like trying to make change and failing at it, and who has control to make that change, and even if you don't have the control, can you be the vigilante of the change that you want to see? Like, this is a weird but kind of interesting way to end a year of conversations about something pretty similar, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
It's so true. Yeah.
I mean, I think, there's, you bringing up all of these points, and I think something else that's embedded in those other conversations we had was like, right, it's always coming like, what do you do? What can you do? And in all of those conversations, there's also often a villain of someone who is like orbiting some sort of purity test, I think. And I think what's really important in this conversation is like, the expectation is not that everyone does it in the same way, right? Like that point that you brought up, Aaron, about learned helplessness is like, certainly at our company, like values diversity potentially even to a fault, not just in like, we will make decisions that make our life harder to sort of make sure that we're creating the freedom for people to do things in their own independent ways. And I think like our belief is that you can go out, and if we're all sort of marching at the same idea of righting wrongs, we may do them in different ways. But if everyone is doing that, then like we're going to start making collective progress. And so the expectation is not like everyone should come out and run their company the way that we run our company, or create a culture that mirrors our culture in some way, but the sort of motive and like velocity towards change and making progress, not in sort of like politically left, right, progressive or non-progressive, like in like there is a problem, like let's orient ourselves towards creating solutions to a thing that we can identify. In fact, like that's like the bet, right? Like a diversity of solutions can become a marketplace of identifying what are better and worse solutions, right?
Yeah, maybe put another way, it's not about the righteousness of knowing, a thing and just needing to convince others somehow you have the answer, but it's more of like the mindset of like, okay, we don't have it all figured out, but that doesn't mean there's nothing I can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it presumes, even that presumes a certain amount of agency, or a certain amount of realized, seized agency, that sometimes I think that we individually learn, for whether it is taught to us or whether we absorb it, that we don't have. And there's sort of this question that pops up of like, can I really make change? Like, or am I allowed to make that change? And then also, to what end is my change actually going to go?
I would love to offer up the smallest representation of an example of this to me. It happened just this week. I make cookies a lot, and
no,
and part of making cookies a lot is making sure that I always have the ingredients for said cookies on hand. I've sometimes described to people that I have a butter insecurity, because there must be at minimum a pound of butter in my freezer at any given time, because that's the minimum amount that you will need for a pie and cookies if I wanted to do both. So, and in this process, I often, whenever I go to the grocery store, I'll just pick up baking goods, so that it's like somewhat a baking supplies hoarding problem, but I'll leave it there. And so
tasty.
I found this week that in my pantry, I had stocked up on a couple different variations of chocolate chips that I just grabbed. I was like, ooh, that looks good. And for the first time discovered that there is a better chocolate chip for cookies than the ones I have always been using. And now I'm going to plug them. It is the Guittard Super Cookie Baking Chip, which is like, it's like a chocolate, it's almost like a wafer, but it's sort of organically shaped. So it has that like perfect flat melt layer of chocolate thing going on. And I promise this relates. The reason is that it's not a change that I was looking for, but that I was open to. I didn't even have to think that hard about it. It's just like through the nature of my behavior of hoarding random baking supplies, because I am not so fussy that it always has to be, I mean, some sugar has to be exactly that way. But other things like keeping an open mind about led me to just this week, after baking for many years, discovering a better chocolate chip cookie chip. How exciting is that? And I feel like if the idea of change need not always be the mountain, you know, or at best a molehill. Like, is there other kinds of, I don't know, is there like an optimistic way to thinking about this, actively keeping open to figuring out new things or unearthing better ways to do something that maybe wasn't even so-called a problem before? I don't know. That just so that it isn't always so negatively framed or always at the scale of like, it's so massive, we can never possibly take this on. Because I think that can be so intimidating.
I totally agree. I mean, I think that openness and intention were dressed down to a certain degree this year. Like, I think that this, like, Instagram, Black Squares, like, there's a little bit of, like, digital passivity that has also been sort of laced around change conversations. But I think that sometimes can trounce on the idea that those are actually necessary. Like, those are prerequisites in order for change to take hold at scale. And I think that when it comes to, like, unlearning learned helplessness, like, creating that space for openness and honoring your intention are essential first steps to then getting to what becomes much more difficult, I think, which is the accountability layer. Like, as soon as you are accountable for those intentions, accountable to your growth, accountable to, like, I'm not going to say accountable to your chocolate chips, because I think that that's actually totally wonderful and sweet and good. But I think that there is an importance, I guess, when the stakes might be different or when they're higher or who knows what, to making sure that you're cognizant of what your progress actually looks like in what you're making.
Yeah, I mean, I think to that point too is like, you know, to the digital passivity, there's also, I think, digital pessimism in the evaluation of any new thing as not being far enough. And there is a removal. Yep. There's a removal in the evaluation of a new thing of the self, right? Of like, what does it take? Is this progress, right? And that's not to diminish, I mean, particularly within the context of social justice issues, right? Like, that is someone's lived experience that may be going through something that is like unjust, unfair, and in some cases, right, like to the loss of their life or to the loss of their freedom or to the loss of whatever. And also, like, so much progress is being, right, like that balance of those conversations. Like, if you sort of look at the side of things aren't far enough, it can often create that sense of helplessness where sort of turning to, like, what's next? Like, right, like, one got him, that one's lost, whatever. Like, and I don't know that is like even a fair assessment in that context, right? But like, when you're looking at, you know, I think about the ways in which our company policies have changed over the years through learning. And if I looked back at what our company policies were 12 years ago or 11 years ago, or, you know, I would be like, that's unfair or unjust or just not thoughtful enough or not far enough, right? But that sort of repetitive pressure of accountability and evaluation turns from being like, no one is often telling us like a thing is wrong, but it is like, if you're turning that lens of accountability on yourself of like, well, why is this way? Why, like the B Corp process, like we were mentioning earlier, was sort of an exercise of like, oh, I hadn't thought about these things. Like those are good policies. Like if there was like an orientation to self-flagellation, you could look at the policies that they show you in that process, say like, get defensive, like, well, why does this policy need to be this way, or and sort of like coil up, close up emotionally, and not sort of make those progressive steps. But if you're like, oh, that's better, and like we're just on a journey of like trying to get this better. You don't need to know all the answers to like get to a next better answer, like over time. I think like that part of it is important, of like not only not hitting yourself, but also not hitting others on the, metaphorically hitting others on this journey.
Yeah, I feel like that reminds me of, and even though I know when we're talking about progress, we aren't talking about this in a political sense, but it does remind me a lot of the two operating altitudes of politics. There's like the on the ground toiling that is just like microscopically incremental, right? And for good reason. There's just like so much that needs to happen to create those changes. But then there's also this like super visionary, lofty level of politics that's like that's supposed to just make you feel a thing. And give you a sense of progress in your gut. Like another example being like that image of the turtle that suddenly made everyone want to vomit every time they saw a straw. Like there's something like the different altitudes of what is visceral versus what is sort of practical and tangible that is really interesting, that I feel like we're talking about too. I don't know if y'all think there's something that's, I don't know if we have to put a value judgment on what's more important, but it may be that we sometimes need both to keep people motivated and knowing where they're going.
And we have an accountability to each other to show up. I think I think we were talking about this before we actually pressed record, but to me, I've always been very confrontational, that's the word, about whether or not I or we should be allowed to have these sort of conversations, lead these sort of conversations, speak up about these sort of conversations. But I guess to the opposite of digital passivity, where you see so much that it can dispirit you, that actually requires all of us to just speak up, say something. Like, don't make it an all or nothing game, and actually recognize the power that we all have within us. Beyonce has the same 24 hours as everybody else. I always say it.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Wow.
Right?
Not Oprah, though. Oprah.
She's got 26.
Oprah has more. Yeah.
Yeah, she's figured it out. But I think that like a lot of that inspiration that needs to come, that those two levels of politic that might need to be, that are similarly at play with impact, I think that we need to use those to say something, and to recognize the power that we have within us.
Yeah, I think that to sort of begin moving towards Jess's corner. Here, come with me on a walk towards Jess's corner.
All right, let's go.
I think the stewardship part, I think, is sort of, for me, and this is my interpretation, right? Like read the paper, and I think the report, and I think it's really well done and does incredible things. But for me, it is about becoming a beacon of what you want the world to be, or what you think is possible. And so, like, in this context, in the context of the paper and sort of this sort of self-reflections on progress, it is, I want us just me as an individual to be the best company we possibly can be, to be just and fair and thoughtful and innovative and sort of coming up with new things and sort of showing the world a better way. I don't think, we're going to win some award of being the best company, but I think everyone here still wants us to be like incrementally moving towards that thing. And if we're sharing and talking about it, you can sort of, that level of vulnerability and being honest and saying like, this is what we're doing. Are you doing something better? Like, tell us, like, this isn't about like clout or woke points or any of that. It is like, if we're all going to try and be better versions of ourselves, like, we need to learn from each other. You can't be expected to know all things and be all things. And so this is an exercise in sharing and sort of, if nothing else, if we're not a steward for being the best, most future, we're not perfect. There's lots of things we haven't gotten right, but maybe we can be a steward for that openness in the conversation and a steward for that vulnerability of having the conversation. And if we learn something in the process, then, that's success. So Jess.
Yep. Take us there. Are we here?
I think we just arrived at your corner. Hi, I'm Joey.
Hello. It's very wrapped up. Very wrapped up over here.
I think what we're trying to say is we have this mindset of trying. And that doesn't mean forcing anything down anybody else's throats. It doesn't really have any other implication to anybody else except that maybe you might inspire someone or, even keep yourself inspired if you are doing the thing that feels right to you, that might just be keeping open to a new chocolate chip that could be better than the last. It could be trying to have a kind of digital optimism that, okay, you've been knocked down several times, but you're trying and that's fine, even if somebody else doesn't like it. And I think in our work and in our real human lives, you can't get mad at anybody for doing their best. So
yeah, we can all be stewards of something. We can all be stewards of something.
And we can all be stewards of something.
I mean that kind of like earnestly, like,
yeah. I know.
And it's important. It's like, you just both hit two things. So I'm gonna like curl in the wrap up corner if that's a thing. I think one is that we're all out. Many of us are out here doing our best, and doing our best is unfucking believable. So keep doing it. And then the second is to recognize that we have a responsibility to move things forward. So pick something, steward it, recognize that it's not going to be there forever, and it's something precious that can disappear. It could be anything you want, but take responsibility, take action, and let's make the world a slightly better place than the way we found it. Yeah.
Fucking A.
Take the cookies or Cheez-Its on the airplane. We're all stewards.
We're all so. Oh yeah, how did Jess just turn into like a split cell version?
We're all changing roles. You guys are wrapping it up.
It's true.
I'm the comedic relief.
It's crazy.
Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by the opposite of Yoda. Try or try not. There is no do.
That like broke my brain a little bit. As always, we'd like to thank executive producer and Yoda, Jess Vander.
We'd also like to thank sound engineer and one of the most accountable people I know, Alex Contel.
Truly.
Thank you, sir. Mm-hmm.
We'd also like to thank programming coordinator and angel of the morning, Les Jacobs.
Angel of the morning, WLCD, what can't Les do? There we go. I think I got the letters wrong. We also want to thank designer Nora Mestrich for our beautiful artwork, and Sarah Gilbert for just keeping us right, keeping us on it, and making sure that this thing can happen, period.
Hundo P accountable.
Yes.
If you're not accountable, just talk to Sarah Gilbert because you will be.
Yeah.
And as always, thanks, Helen.
Thank you, Ellen.
Special
Special
thanks. I would love to kick us off, speaking of Yoda and the Star Wars universe. I'd like to thank...
Yes.
I would like to thank the decision to create porgs in the Star Wars universe, because I don't know if you know this, but I thought this was the best thing. Apparently, they were invented because there were too many puffins in the background of all of these shoots, and they were like, what do we do with all these puffins? And so they turned them into porgs, and I just think that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. So thank you, porgs.
Porgs are weird looking little bird creatures. I had to look it up.
I was lost. I thought that you were going somewhere else. I was just going to thank them for... I was going to give a special thanks to the Eclipse trailer, the Star Wars Eclipse trailer, which is going to be apparently a new Star Wars game that's powered by is also developed with Quantic Dream, who created Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human and really smart narrative gaming. They were the pioneer in that, and so I'm like, I guess that's just something else to be excited for the Star Wars universe. There you go.
I thought you were gonna thank them for the redemptive arc of Boba Fett.
Oh my god, I love this.
Wow.
Yeah, there's
love
the new
this.
Boba Fett series is coming out that has a redemptive arc for Boba Fett, which I was like,
How could you?
I thought we were going from
Positive relationship
Angelica
with this.
having a redemptive arc to then Boba Fett having a redemptive arc.
Never forget what
where's
happened to
George?
Django.
Okay, we gotta thank George, Mr. George Lucas. Thanks, man. Apparently, we have to special thanks you, because without you and some of those other source materials that you don't necessarily already credit, we would not be here today. Now, just saying.
Yeah, and Ming Na Wen is in the Boba Fett series, and she's just a badass. She was
Yes.
in Agents
True.
of S.H.I.E.L.D. just badassing, and now she's just in the Boba Fett show just badassing. So
Yeah,
I want
I
Ming Na
want
Wen's shout outs.
more of that.
Yes.
More Angelica Pickles energy.
Yeah, yo, AP energy. It goes very, very far
She
for you.
kind of
Just
has
saying.
Angelica Pickles energy, doesn't she?
Yeah. I mean, let's just
Actually,
be
though,
real.
Like,
Well, no, you ain't wrong.
Wait a minute.
No, I see that you just connected a dot that will make certain synapses in my brain go. So yeah,
I would like to
appreciate that.
thank what's the best kind of pickle? Butter
a gherkin.
Butter chip.
did y'all
Not butter,
did
not
y'all-
dill, just straight up gherkin. Let's go teeny.
There was like a little pickle dust up online recently because someone put a picture of 4 different types of pickles and said you have to kill one, and people were like, "This is like," they were very upset about like the butter, the sweet dill, the sour, and the gherkin. I don't like any pickles, so I'm like fine to kill them all. You know, like
Yeah.
get your pickles out of my face and my sandwich.
Whoosh. Yes, put onions on Joey's sandwich. Extra onions. Don't put onions on Joey's sandwiches. That would be
Don't
very
do
bad.
it. He'll be really unhappy with you.
Yes.
Yeah. No, thank you, onions. And with that, good day, sir.
Good day, sir. And actually, I got nothing else. Thanks, and looking forward
Okay,
to.
bye.
Yeah. Is that it? Okay. All right.
Love you. Mean it.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, I love you.
Yes, I don't know if you saw him over there. He was like, I would like to not be in
like,
this room anymore.
If only
Can
I could open this door.
It's like it smells like farts in here.